Lixplore, nestled in the breathtaking highlands of Laos. I am exploring a village of the Hmong tribe. According to legend, the infamous General Wang Pao, who was involved with the CIA during the secret war against the Liberation Army Pathet Lao and allied Vietnamese forces, passed through this area. He is the individual whom CIA Director William Colby referred to as the biggest hero of the Vietnam War. In sharing the authentic narrative of his experiences and the CIA's secret war, I am revealing the vibrant life within this Hmong village. The locals exude warmth and hospitality, embracing a simple lifestyle rooted in agricultural pursuits and the sale of cultural treasures to visitors. Unfortunately, I find myself as the sole visitor right now, which sheds light on their current lack of prosperity. The Hmong community shared insights into their rich history, tracing their origins back to Mongolia, as well as details about their family life, work and leisure activities. I was even shown the technique of using an arrow. The Hmong community has a rich history centered around the cultivation of opium, which served as their main cash crop. It is now prohibited in Laos. During the 1960s, as the CIA's covert operations unfolded, a modest patch of poppy on a family farm could yield an annual income of $100 to $200. This was a considerable sum in Laos, where the average yearly income was just $70. The Hmong stood out as the leading opium producers in Laos. Here we can see the tools they utilized back then to cultivate opium. In the 1940s and 1950s, under French colonial rule in Laos, French intelligence strategically tapped into the opium trade to finance anti-communist militias. Between 1946 and 1954, they engaged in a secretive exchange of arms for opium through programs such as Operation X. Following the downfall of the French colonial power, the CIA took over this system. Alfred McCoy, a history professor at the University of Wisconsin, referenced interviews in his meticulously researched book, The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia, which confirms that pilots of Air America, a CIA-operated airline, transported opium shipments. The CIA made efforts to block the release of his book. Profiles in Opium, Wang Pao and the Tragedy of the Hmong reveals meticulously that Air America helicopters and light planes transported food and weapons to numerous locations in the mountains, while the return flights brought Hmong opium back to Long Tien in Laos, the CIA's operational hub. CIA agent Victor Marchetti revealed in an interview that, with the assistance of the CIA, I doubt that they had any strong, deep understanding of what they were allowing to happen by turning their head the other way and letting Wang Pao ship his dope out, which was made into heroin, which was going to our troops, which was corrupting people throughout Southeast Asia and back there, the effect it had on crime. In 1971, John Ingersoll, the director of the U.S. Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, precursor of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency DEA, made some truly shocking revelations. The director, while under oath, revealed to a congressional panel that Air America, the CIA's airline, had engaged in the smuggling of heroin into Vietnam. He disclosed that merely a month before his testimony, authorities had confiscated 80 kilos of heroin from an Air America plane arriving in Saigon. He specifically referenced the Hmong in connection with Air America and opium. Ron Rickenbach served as a USAID Refugee Operations Officer in Laos from 1962 to 1969, overseeing the delivery of food and supplies to the Hmong and the Lima sites, which were bases housing covert military installations. He remarked, "I was on the airstrips. My team was responsible for providing the aircraft. I found myself in regions where opium cultivation thrived. I saw it being put on Air America planes myself. Neil Hansen, an Air American pilot, candidly remarked, "Indeed, I have witnessed the sticky bricks, that is opium, being loaded, and there was no one questioning their right to transport it." A confidential field report from 1972 outlined the scenario. Quote, "It was ironic that the CIA was entrusted with narcotics intelligence, especially considering they were backing the key players." Unquote. Despite the CIA's involvement in facilitating the movement of opiates to the US, they consistently cloaked their actions in secrecy, claiming it was all for the sake of national security. Beginning in 1966, Wang Pao dispatched his officers to remote villages to procure the opium harvest from individual Hmong farmers. The farmers marketed their modest opium crop yields, typically ranging from 3 to 15 kilos, to purchasing agents representing Wang Pao. They provided an enticing offer that surpassed the market rate for opium, purchasing a kilo for $60 rather than the typical $50 per kilo, thereby securing loyalty. Wang Pao's Hmong army was a conscripted force. Young Hmong men found themselves either conscripted or forcibly recruited into service. Should a village decline to permit the conscription of its young men, Wang Pao would retaliate it by halting the purchase of their opium and would threaten to regard the village as if it were aligned with the Pathet Lao enemy. He strategically employed rice as a tool to enlist young men and boys from the village into his army, all the while boosting opium production among families. With rice now provided by Wang Pao and the CIA, families no longer had to cultivate rice, allowing them to allocate more farmland to the poppy crop. Throughout the course of the war, Hmong villages increasingly relied on rice supplied by CIA planes and helicopters. If a village refused to allow its young people to be recruited by Wang Pao, he blackmailed it by stopping the rice deliveries. So he used more and more child soldiers. The CIA did not engage in the direct purchase of Hmong opium as the French did, nor did they sell it to distributors in Saigon. Instead, it let her proxy Wang Pao do this alone. By the mid-60s, the Hmong found themselves unable to sell their opium to their usual buyers, the mule caravan traders who journeyed through the Golden Triangle, visiting the remote Hmong villages each spring to acquire the opium harvest. The conflict had rendered the countryside perilous. The Hmong relied on Wang Pao and the CIA for the purchase and transportation of their cash crop to the market. In the regions where many of the Hmong resided, traditional roads were absent, replaced instead by winding trails and paths suited for pack animals. To equip and support the Hmong, the CIA initiated the construction of landing strips on ridges and mountains, facilitating landings for small planes and helicopters. These compact, unpaved landing zones were referred to as Lima sites, and by 1970 there were roughly 300 of these locations scattered throughout the plain of jars. Longtieng, a quaint village situated approximately 125 kilometers north of Vientiane, served as the operational hub for the CIA. In 1971, Longtieng thrived with a vibrant population of 40,000, teeming with life and energy. The landing strip stretched an impressive 1,300 meters, capable of accommodating any aircraft type with ease. The CIA operated from Longtieng, flying to the 300 Hmong Lima sites to provide essential food and weapons supplies. Of course, the CIA could not use airplanes with the insignia of the US military. CIA aircraft were cleverly disguised as civilian planes to obscure American military involvement, ensuring a plausible deniability. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger provided a straightforward explanation for the American military's use of the CIA in Laos: because it was less accountable. While Wang Pao held sway over a significant portion of the poppy harvest, he did not dominate the entirety of the poppy production in Laos. Some Hmong aligned themselves against Vang Pao, choosing to sell their opium to the Pathet Lao, as noted by Keith Quincy in his book Harvesting Pachai's Wet, The Hmong and America's Secret War in Laos. This young Hmong man shared with me that his family aligned with the Pathet Lao rather than the CIA and Vang Pao, highlighting the divisions within the Hmong community.
My family became communist. Yeah, we stay here. We live in Lao country. We believe Lao PDR. Yeah.
Alfred McCoy, professor of history at the University of Wisconsin, reveals in his 1972 book The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia that a typical Hmong family generated an annual yield of 15 kilos of opium. At that time, it was estimated that 24,000 Hmong families could have generated an impressive 360,000 kilos annually. During the Secret War, Tony Poe, Vang Pao's CIA case officer, confirmed that Vang Pao was involved in selling Hmong opium to South Vietnamese heroin syndicates. Quote, "Oh, he was making millions," Poe stated, adding that the money was funneled into US bank accounts, Switzerland, wherever. Even William Colby, who led the CIA from 1973 to 1976, acknowledged, and I quote, "Hmong grew opium which was turned into heroin and flown to Vietnam, where it was sold to American troops, and then some of it was sent to the US." Unquote. A portion of the opium was transported by air from Long Tieng, where Vang Pao established his headquarters, to Vientiane. He operated his own airline, Sieng Huang Air, also known as Air Opium. A significant heroin refinery was operating at full capacity. Subsequently, it was dispatched to South Vietnam for distribution. A significant number of US soldiers stationed in South Vietnam turned to heroin, with nearly one-third of the military troops falling into addiction. The CIA obviously had no problem with the fact that Vang Pao, which it led, poisoned the American troops for profit. The CIA assigned Vang Pao's forces the critical mission of disrupting communist supply routes along the Ho Chi Minh Trail that traversed Laos. Yet the Hmong forces faced relentless defeats against the overwhelming superior adversaries. By 1968, Vang Pao's formidable Hmong army, once numbering 40,000, had suffered huge losses. Keith Quincy vividly describes in his book how young teenagers stepped into the roles of their fallen elder brothers, forming platoons of diminutive soldiers clad in oversized uniforms, their sleeves rolled up to the elbow, ready to wield weapons far too large for their small hands. Edgar Pop Buell, who managed Hmong food supplies for USAID and collaborated closely with the CIA during the Secret War, made a remarkable observation in 1968. Quote, "A short time ago we rounded up 300 fresh Hmong recruits. 30% were aged 14 or younger, with 10 of them being just 10 years old," he added. 15 or 16 accounted for another 30%. 40% of the group consisted of individuals aged 45 and above. "Where did the ones in between go?" he asked. And he answered, "Let me be clear, they're all gone." The village elders urgently appealed to Vang Pao, urging him to halt the bloodshed and relocate his Hmong people to western Laos, a region untouched by the conflict. His attitude was as clear as it was brutal. If a village refused to have its young people recruited by Vang Pao, he blackmailed it by stopping the rice supplies, which led to famine. As 1970 approached, the Hmong army under Vang Pao had lost its edge as a formidable fighting unit. The Hmong militias faced a critical shortage of young men, unable to meet the demands of increasing casualties. The darkest years unfolded between 1968 and 1969, a period marked by the tragic loss of 18,000 Hmong soldiers in combat, alongside countless other Hmong civilians who also perished. As a Hmong soldier serving under Vang Pao, Your odds of survival in combat during the years 1968 and 1969 were approximately 50%. Beginning in 1968, there was a significant decline in Hmong opium production. In 1971, Laos's production had dwindled to an estimated 30 metric tons annually, a significant drop from the 100 to 150 metric tons it had achieved just a few years earlier. In 1974, the Hmong found themselves as refugees within their own homeland. As the enemy Pathet Lao advanced, they found themselves compelled to seek refuge in areas close to Vientiane and Long Tieng. Their entire sustenance relied solely on the CIA. An entire generation of young men and children had been lost to the CIA's secret war. They had abandoned their traditional way of life. The Hmong were filled with dread for their safety. The Pathet Lao publicly declared a vendetta against the Hmong who had opposed them. The Pathet Lao were not inclined to overlook Wang Pao's brutal summary executions of their troops. The triumph of the Pathet Lao and the downfall of Wang Pao resulted in the displacement of between 100,000 and 200,000 Hmong refugees. A significant number of these Hmong sought refuge in camps located in Thailand, just across the Mekong River. Countless souls would risk it all. The ultimate tally for Wang Pao's Hmong army in the secret war reveals a staggering loss. Between 30,000 and 40,000 Hmong soldiers perished in battle. An additional 3,000 to 4,000 are unaccounted for. Countless Hmong civilians lost their lives. An estimated 1/4 of all Hmong men and boys died in the secret war. The heartbreaking reality: more Hmong perished in the secret war in Laos than American soldiers did in the Vietnam War. What about Wang Pao? He escaped aboard a CIA helicopter to safety to Thailand and later established his new life in the United States. Wang Pao's actions were marked by warmongering, violence, theft, and a ruthless pursuit of power. While he is celebrated by his Hmong followers who traveled with him to the United States, history paints a contrasting picture of his legacy. The Hmong were exploited by both the French and the CIA and dragged into a civil war against their Laotian compatriots, a conflict from which they derived little benefit and which cost them dearly. It's another cruel tragedy that happened in the world's most bombed country, which is Laos. In an upcoming video from Laos, I will reveal the ongoing impact of US bombs that continue to kill and maim individuals today, as well as the lasting effects of America's Agent Orange chemicals, which are still leading to stillbirths and disabilities in babies in Laos. That's it for today. Thank you for clicking the like button and for subscribing to my video channel. See you soon in my next video.